Hello, everyone. Good evening. Nice to see all of you. Welcome to this OET All Stars live session. And as we log in, please start this wonderful session. Please type in where you're logging in from and whether you are preparing for an immediate test or whether it's going to be a little bit later. So my name is Milen Jacob, and this is IRS Group. So we have been a premium preparation provider for OET and the first OET All Stars in Asia. So here we go. I will just look out for your comments. Yeah, hello. Hello, Vinci. Hello, Jay Sriram. Hello, Ansa Maria. Good evening. Aviana, hello. From Philippines, gift from Zambia, Christiana, Kevin from Kenya, Ikra from Pakistan, Imran, yeah, the country of Imran Khan, right? Nitish, John, Elizabeth from the UK, Bindusha, I, Uzomo from Nigeria, Amira, your test is next month, right? Sangeeta, hello, Christiana, Juliet from Zimbabwe, Katrina, hello from Philippines, Tanya, you're a doctor from Turkey, Lekshika, hi, Amira Ali, Jayalalani from Sri Lanka, Mind from Myanmar, Ruth from Zambia, Vineet from, hello Vineet, Suganya, Shabir from Bangladesh, hello everybody, Rosa from Italy, Fatima from Gambia, Rasul from Iran, Jiomyeon from Botswana, Veer Sena, your exam is next month. Hello Vineet from Delhi, Sangeeta, hello everybody. So good to have all of you on this session, and it's a privilege for me to be able to help you out in this session. So today we'll be doing speaking, and I'm going to discuss a very important skill that you need in speaking. It's about how you can apply active listening skills. So I can't read all your names. Tars from Uganda, Jitin, King Khan, Vijay, hello everyone. Nice to see all of you. I'll go through all your names and comments as we progress as well. Yes, so I'd like to begin this session with a short quiz. Type in your answer if it's a yes or a no. Is the patient's narrative or story really important in an OET role play or in a medical consultation? If you think it's important, type in yes. If it's not, no. Absolutely, you are right. It is important. So that brings me to the next question, which is where does a patient's narrative come in prominently in an OET role play or a medical consultation? Is it at the beginning? Is it throughout or towards the end? You don't have to write the whole answer, just type in A, B, or C, what you think is the answer. Aviana says yes, it's important to get information. So I have option A, B, throughout, at the beginning, B, at the beginning, throughout. Yeah. Good. Right. So it's so good that you are responding, and I'm happy about it because that's the only way I can interact with you in this session. And well, I would say it's not a very black and white answer, but of course, I go for B throughout, but definitely there's a greater weightage at the beginning because that's when we ask a lot of open-ended questions to find the narrative, especially in detail, but the narrative might continue later, but to a lesser degree. Yes, so Prof, you're right. Yeah. Right. And the third question, how should the patient's narrative be interrupted by the health professional? Should you frequently interrupt, minimally, or never? So when they are telling their story, when they are giving the narrative, should you stop them? Again, it's A, B, C. Frequently, minimally, never. Yeah, I see all the answers, A, B, C. So I'd say I'd go for B, minimally. You shouldn't interrupt them quite often, but very rarely if you have to, step in, that's fine. But let them still be, able to tell the narrative. And now there's a slightly different perspective in the context of OET, because all you have is 5 minutes and you can't let the entire time be the patient's narrative for that matter. Right. So this is another question which a lot of candidates have told me is something that bothers them. I want to know if what bothers you. The role play has started and the patient is narrating his or her story for them. What could be bothering you? What might be going on in your mind at that point of time? Now here you have to type in your answer. The role play has started. So you are in the middle of the test and the patient is telling their story, their perspective, a narrative. But something could be going on in your mind. That's the question, what's bothering you? Amrita says it's time, right? Aviana says fluency, use of correct language, sentence, right? So the task, language, how will I make sure they understand? That's gift. Royal Road, I'd say I don't know how to speak fluently. Artistic Alchemy says how to start. How to begin the conversation, how to console, pressure, task achievement, how to use correct sentences, right? So, yeah. On the screen, I'm also showing some, things that could bother some candidates. Chronology of the task, what to do in the first 3 minutes. Now we're talking about after the preparation time, if that's what you're talking about, how to deal with the situation, right? So for many candidates, these are the questions that the concerns. What will I say next? How will I stop him? He's going on with the story. I have to cut in through, answer the patient's questions. Can I do well? The beginning of the role play, that's something that might bother you. Speak for 5 minutes. Will I, finish the task too early? Or for some candidates, is the other thought whether you can finish all the tasks, which is something that OET doesn't want you to do. You're not supposed to, OET doesn't want you to complete all the tasks. It's okay if you haven't completed every single task given in the card, that's fine. Now, is this a problem that you face, performance anxiety? And if it is, that's going to make you a passive listener and lead to poor outcomes. So one of the reasons of low scores, speaking tests which are not up to the mark, not performed well, you don't feel better, is because you get worked, you get stressed. And the primary reason is performance anxiety, the constant worry whether you will be able to do a good job or not. And that affects your scores, your performance, your test delivery in every way. But one of the ways in which it affects is that it makes you a passive listener. You're not an active listener. So that's something that I'm going to help you with, how you can be an active listener so that you don't have time to have this anxiety, performance anxiety. So let's see how you can get that. So Lian Wen, author and clinician, says 80% of diagnosis can be made just based on the patient stories. That's how important it is and how undervalued it is. Now, across the world, it is a problem. However, having said that, in countries like in India, where I come from, or where a lot of OET candidates are from, clinicians don't have much time, the luxury of time, to listen to the story. In many countries, for instance, I'm aware that in Australia, for example, a GP has roughly 15 minutes to spend on a patient, whereas in India, typically it's much, lower, like let's say 5 minutes. And some doctors say they hardly get even that. And so that might be a major problem. So when you come to OET, be aware of how important this is, because perhaps in your training and in your practice, you might not have thought about it. So we are going to look at how you can progress from being a passive listener to an active listener. I'm going to share some important tips, techniques, and methodologies and strategies, how you can apply those in very simple ways. So active listeners pay full attention. So when the patient starts telling their story, pay attention. It's as simple as that. Listen to understand. So the reason why you pay attention is that you should be able to listen carefully so that you understand. Right, and discover the story. They have a story to tell. Now, in a real clinical context, it's a real story. In the OET test, it's something that the interlocutor will cook up, or based on their task. That's fine. Yeah. There are a lot of comments, by the way. I'll go through it in a moment. Here, the patient's perspective. Yeah. So now, although active listening as such isn't a criterion, it spreads across the various clinical communication criteria. Of course, it's very prominent in information gathering, but when you look at, for instance, patient's perspective, understanding and incorporating the patient's perspective is another criterion in itself. So it's quite important. Observe their emotions. And this is something that candidates sometimes miss out because you are not much worried about how the patient might sound like. Do they sound upset? Do they sound scared? Those emotions are important. Pick on their cues. They give some signals. They might not tell you exactly what they're going through. So those are signals for you to pick on. Right. Signal interest, show interest. Now, these are all important because sometimes And finally, appear supportive, because sometimes candidates could be dismissive. Oh, all right, that's okay, that's fine, it's not a big problem, don't worry. That is not the right approach. Sometimes you try to empathize, but it ends up being dismissal. Dismissal is not good for your scores. It's not good in OET. Don't dismiss what the patient says. For instance, as a healthcare professional, you know that it's not a major problem that they are telling you, but you have to pay attention, actively listen to it. And quite often when they say, like, for instance, I have a pain. Oh, no, don't worry, it's okay. It's not good. You're not listening actually, and it's not helpful at all. So let's look at some of the techniques. Silence and pausing, verbal encouragement, echoing and repetition, paraphrasing and interpretation. So these are all important active listening techniques. And I will, run you through a couple of contexts where I'll show you some examples of how you can apply these and then improve your speaking. Sorry about it, some interruptions outside. Yes. So let's look at the first one, which is silence and pausing. So here we have Nancy, and she's finding it hard to cope with her insomnia. So how can you apply silence and pausing? And then we look at some of the other techniques as well. So this is what the patient says: I just lie awake at night, I can't sleep, and then I start to panic. I desperately need some sleep, but it doesn't come at all. I have no clue what time it is when I doze off, but I'm sure it must be very late. So when the patient is telling their narrative, listen, be silent, pause. You don't have to jump in. So that's very important. But I know that for many candidates, there could be this urge to step in. No. The narrative is important. Pay attention. And we're going to look at how, along with that silence and pause, you can also include some verbal encouragement. So the same narrative, the patient says, I just lie awake at night, I can't sleep, and then I start to panic. I desperately need some sleep, but it doesn't come at all. So it's a very short verbal encouragement, but it means a lot to the patient and shows them that you're listening. It's important. So the patient continues the narrative. I have no clue what time it is when I doze off, but I'm sure it must be very late. And the health professional again says, I see. So even by including such short verbal encouragement, or you can acknowledge, all right, it's important. So it's a natural way of interacting and showing interest. So that's really something that all of you can try. And for at least some candidates who are not used to it, in non-English speaking countries, it might, at least in some places, it might sound like unnatural. So try learning how to do that, repeat such phrases, and then it becomes part of your repertoire. You'll get used to it. Is another example. Sadiq feels that the new tablet for his BP is making him giddy. So this is what he says: I feel very giddiness. And I think it's the new tablet that the doctor had prescribed. So what would you say? Can you think of something? Type in. Mm-hmm. Right. So here, yeah, I've got some good examples. Jinsey says giddy. Oh, all right. Yes, I see. Good. Absolutely, you can try different things. Perfect. Here, the healthcare professional says really go on. So the patient continues. As I woke up, it was very hazy. I've never had this experience with the oral medicine. So can you ask the doctor to change it? Right. And then she again continues like, it must have been awful. Right. So that's also empathizing with it, with some verbal encouragement. So if you are a candidate who would like to have one-on-one sessions, please feel free to contact one of our student counselors. You can request a free demo session and we'll assess you. You can request an assessment and then we'll suggest an ideal course for you of the right duration that matches your level. So as a premium preparation provider and All Stars, IRS Group provides the finest training. So if you are interested, please be in touch with our numbers are on the screen and these are Indian numbers. You can also connect with our counselors on WhatsApp. So let's continue. So now I'm going to look at echoing and repetition. How do you echo or repeat what a patient says and what's the significance of that? So here we have the next patient who is Hisahito, who has come in with a complaint of chest pain. Right. So he says, comes on has a heavy feeling on my chest. You can type in your response. How do you respond to this? Just wait for a moment for your response. All right. So here is an example when the health professional is echoing that. And this is usually done when you find something which is really, really important. You want to echo so that you can, take that as the next point, and it could be really important. I see an overuse of I'm sorry. Of course, you can use I'm sorry, but quite often there's a lot of I am sorries in the wrong place, unnecessary apologies. So make sure it's minimized. You don't have to be sorry for what the patient says in all context. There are better ways of, making sure you are actively listening and taking the conversation forward. That's one of the overused, I'd say, cliche-like expressions, which sometimes might make it look a bit boring and unnatural for that matter. So he says, yes, doctor, it's a pain that feels like something is pressing against my chest. So again, an encouragement, so it's a mix of echoing and verbal encouragement. And so any of these techniques are not meant to be used in isolation. Certainly in any normal, natural conversation, it would be a mix of all of these. But some context, a particular technique might be more appropriate. So finally, we come to paraphrasing and interpretation, which is, again, something you can try to show that you are actively listening and improve your speaking. So here we have Tracy, and she could be experiencing short-term memory loss and possible signs of dementia. She is guilty of a poor diet, right? So she says, I should have taken care of my diet, probably paid more attention to eating healthy. Okay, so sometimes you're not very clear about what the patient is saying, and it's important that you make sure that you are on the same page. So how can you do that? So here the health professional is asking, do you think that a poor diet has caused the memory loss? So you are rewording it, paraphrasing it, and trying to interpret, trying to make sense of what they have just told you. So this is important because sometimes, it's important really to make sure you have understood what they were telling. And patients sometimes don't explicitly tell what they're going through. It might be really, there might be some gaps. It's important to fill in those gaps. Right. So, to which the patient says, yeah, that's my thought. Is that the case, nurse? So by paraphrasing, this nurse had made sure that she interprets what the patient said, and that they agree on it, they're on the same page, and then patient confirms that that is the case, which is absolutely important in any clinical communication. Right. So it's question time, but I also want to remind you that active listening is a skill that you have to take forward throughout the rest of your life, because it's considered an important communication skill across the board. It's not just for OET, but in OET and in a clinical context, it's something that's very important. So type in any questions you might have, and I'd be happy to take a few questions before we call it a day. I see some good responses to some of the questions that I had posted earlier. Right. Yes, yes. when can we use the active listening paraphrase sentence? Or when you think that something isn't that clear, or you just want to reiterate, if you're asked a question you don't know, how will you go about it? Okay, you can ask the patient to come again. Pardon me, can you come again, or something of that sort? I guess that's what you meant. Before any task or before patient's concern. Okay, Jinsi is asking for examples of paraphrasing. So let's say the patient or a carer, for example, says, I have no clue what to do about my partner. So, you can paraphrase like, do you mean that you find it difficult to care for your partner at home? So that's an example of paraphrasing. Agency. Can we repeat words that you have already said? Of course you can, but not too much. Like, now pay attention. It's a good idea to record your own, speaking and see which is a word that you use a lot. And this happens to everyone. It happens to me. So you should be aware, like, it's okay to repeat, like, I understand, but having like 10 I understands in 5 minutes doesn't look good, right? So I am aware that a lot of you pay attention to making sure you speak more and listen less. So that's one takeaway I would suggest for you today. It's important to have that dialogue maintained. Quite often I see a lot of candidates going to a monologue mode where you just keep on telling and you don't want even to listen to what the interlocutor wants to say. What can you use instead of sorry to hear that? Now, of course, you can do a lot. For example, you can empathize with them. So you can say like, I know it must be hard for you. I can imagine it's hard for you to go through this. Something like that. So Milen is asking, so could you please tell me how to improve intonation? Well, Milen, I've done another session entirely on the pronunciation features, which you can look at the archives, but pay attention to the rules of intonation, like, basically, if you have answers and statements, generally it's falling. WH questions would be falling, and also rising tone would be like polar questions or interrogative questions. Yes, no questions would be rising. Surprise, fear, or intense feelings could be rising, right? So I'm afraid that's all the time I've got. Thank you very much, all of you, for the quick responses, and it's a privilege for me and for IRS Group to deliver these sessions on OET Officials platform as OET All Stars. Thank you, everyone, and be in touch with us. We'll be happy to